Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mary Doane. I'm the supervising instructor for education programs here with Zen Caregiving Project. And today I'm really happy to be with our executive director, Roy Remer, who has been a colleague of mine for over 20 years, a dear friend for over 20 years, and has this new book, Zen Caregiving, and we get to talk together about it today. So, hi, Roy, and
Hi, Mary.
welcome. How fun to be with you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, I know so much about your journey, but not everyone else does yet. So, please just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about this book, Zen Caregiving, um, what it means for you to have written it and why you wrote it now.
Mm, yeah, let's see. The full title, Zen Caregiving: How to Care for Yourself While Caring for Others, very much about self care. We'll get more deeply into that. But just to say that, I was really fortunate, gosh, almost 30 years ago in 1997 to have stumbled upon Zen Hospice Project at the time. And I was at a point in my life where I was getting over or moving through the grief over the death of a beloved grandmother of mine. And people directed me to Zen Hospice Project. I started volunteering as a caregiver and learning the different approaches that Zen Caregiving Project now teaches to its volunteer caregivers, to the caregivers who join us for our classes, and learning these approaches, learning these different practices really transformed my life, transformed me as a person. And when I found myself in the role of family caregiver, as caregiver to people who were living with long term chronic and terminal illnesses, I could see through direct experience how supportive these practices are in our lives. And, not even just in the context of providing care to someone in need, but just in regards to interacting with people in our lives, our partners, our friends, our colleagues. These practices are universally applicable to every situation. So, after having worked with a number of people, including yourself, to develop our mindful caregiving education, I thought to myself, it would be really wonderful to wrestle this curriculum, wrestle this training that we have worked on for so many years into the book form and to offer it to people in this form so that they have a way of accessing the teachings in a slightly different way than, say, coming to train with us to become a volunteer or to participate in one of our classes. So, this was really the genesis of Zen caregiving: how to care for yourself while caring for others. And it probably also might be interesting for people to know that before transitioning to full time work with Zen Caregiving Project, I had a career in the book publishing business. So I kind of had a sense of what the process could look like, both in terms of writing a book, but also getting a book published. And in retrospect, I have to admit that was really quite helpful in terms of understanding a plan for completing the book, but also understanding how a book could be beneficial if it can get into the hands of people who can benefit from it.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, there's so much there that I want to respond to. Um, but I'll start out by saying that it's a beautiful book. And
Thank you.
as familiar as I am with you and your story and your teaching and being involved, as you said, with our teaching and the material that is included in the book, I found in my own experience of reading through it, there was something there. So just that the value of seeing it on the page, of being there in a room as I'm reading in my leisure time. Yeah, so really feeling the truth of what you say, the benefit of offering, kind of distilling all your experience and this wisdom that you draw from into a book form. So thank you for bringing that to all of us. Yeah, yeah,
Mary, can
um,
I jump
yeah.
in there and say, you know, part of my intention with the book is to both honor the many teachers I've had in learning how to integrate these practices into one's life and to introduce the reader to my teachers, but teachers out there in the world who, some of whom have also written books. So the book is filled with different nuggets of wisdom that I've had the pleasure of coming in contact with, but a lot of quotes from different writers and different teachers in the space. And so one of my hopes is that while certainly caregivers will benefit, I believe, from what I have to bring to the space, they'll also be introduced to different writings and different teachers that can help them along the path in caregiving. So I just wanted to make
Mm,
that point. I feel such
yeah.
gratitude to the people I've had the benefit of crossing paths with in this work.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, for your generosity that I know is so genuine. Yeah, in wanting to benefit others just as you have benefited from, yeah, wise ones and experience. Yeah, thank you. Um, Well, maybe we could continue on with this idea of self care. So, right there in the title, caring for yourself while caring for others. And I noted that, like very early in the book, even in the introduction, um, you wrote that ultimately this book about caregiving is about self care. And I'm so curious about that. That feels so potent and important to me. Um, and as we're living in this time where self care um, feels more and more and more necessary and important, and also can feel really charged, or it can be dismissed as kind of a, a spa day or a bubble bath that doesn't really address one's deeper needs for nourishment. So, can you say a little bit more about self care, what it means, and yeah, how caregivers can and need to care for themselves as part of the caregiving that they are doing for others in their life.
You know, that term self care is quite loaded for a lot of people, as you are pointing out. So, at the outset, I want to say I recognize that, especially for paid caregivers, in some healthcare environments and some health systems, this term self care can be an easy way to respond to feedback that there are systemic problems that contribute to a sense of burden, high stress load, and burnout, actually. And this sounds a little dramatic, but I think sometimes this term self care or the encouragement to just practice more self care can be kind of weaponized. So I know a lot of caregivers have really high caseloads, and even family caregivers are, some family caregivers, it's seven, you know. So I want to acknowledge that for a lot of caregivers, it's really challenging to make space for the kind of self-care that you alluded to, the day away from your loved one who you're caring for, or, being able to go for a massage. It's a time issue, but it's a financial issue as well. So in writing this book, what I'm really trying to do is write about what I consider to be moment to moment self care. So I'm introducing ways of tending to our own needs, tending to our own emotions and stress load in a way that can be integrated into all the activities that we're already engaged in by necessity. So, this word Zen in the title can be either, you know, inviting for some folks, but I also think that there are caregivers out there. I know that there are caregivers out there where they may find resistance seeing this term Zen caregiving because they may not be familiar with Zen. So, this is not a book where I'm teaching formal meditation per se. It's not a book where I'm really teaching about the rich, beautiful doctrinal tradition of Zen Buddhism. It's really a book that's inspired by Zen practice. And sure, there are approaches in the book that I think directly come from what I would describe as Zen practice. But really, it's very much about mindfulness. And mindfulness, I consider to be a state of mind. It's a quality of attention or a mindset. And I'm offering ways that people can practice in each moment. So even in the midst of busyness where we're delivering certain kinds of care, we can drop into present moment awareness. We can drop into a mind state where we're making a choice to let go of unhelpful or even unhealthy thoughts and come back to, say, physical sensations, come back to the breath, come back to the state of the heart. There's a section in the book on compassion. So, different ways to keep the heart open, to extend compassion, not just to the person we're caring for, but to ourselves, because the role can be so demanding. And we make mistakes. There isn't a caregiver out there who isn't just simply human like the rest of us. And as humans, we experience vulnerability and we make mistakes. And sometimes it's necessary to offer ourselves some self comfort, self soothing. So, this is the practice of self compassion. And there's also a section on loss. So, every caregiver experiences some form of loss because as humans, we experience loss with every breath in every moment. With every breath, something is falling away as something new arises. This is just the human condition. So the book offers ways to get more comfortable in the conversation of loss. It offers ways to address one's own loss, but also how to hold the loss of those who we're caring for. Because what I have learned about caregiving is that we're not only holding our own losses, but we're trying to make space to hold the loss of the person we're caring for. We're witnessing their loss as we experience our own. So these sections of the book, it's broken up into four sections: mindfulness, compassion, loss. And the fourth section I call intimacy. And each chapter, I would say, offers approaches and ideas on how to deepen intimacy, not just with the person we're caring for, but with ourselves and the world around us. Yeah. And that fourth section was a convenient place to put a chapter that maybe didn't neatly fit into one of the first three sections. But self care ultimately is really what this book is about. But I certainly don't want anyone to be frightened off by this idea of finding time to care for oneself. It's achievable.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Um, mm, yeah, I'm struck by the moment to moment self-care, as you said, and, this state of being, state of mind that mindfulness is and can be. Um, and I noticed as you were just sharing about the 4 sections of the book and the different chapters, um, a kind of a pattern that, I imagine is intentional, but we haven't talked about it before this, that each chapter begins with some quote or some wisdom, as you said, maybe a prayer or a mantra, and then kind of the main teaching piece, the content of the chapter, and then this practice, this way to bring it into our moment to moment, day to day, real life experience. So, this kind of like, I'm curious if there was a model in your mind or just how you would respond to my seeing this kind of pattern of like establishing an intention or a purpose, so maybe a context, and then some learning and reflection, and then some action, then some applying it to lived experience. Um, Certainly that fits with the teaching that we do in our courses, but I wonder if there's more about that kind of pattern that comes up for you now to offer us.
Well, thank you for that question. I thought a lot about the structure of the book, of course, before I started writing it. And I knew from the outset that I wanted these chapters to be short and concise. And I wanted the book to be very usable. So I think caregivers who have the book, they can use it as a tool to help them through particular issues that they may confront in their caregiving. So while I think it makes a lot of sense to read the book from the beginning to the end in that kind of narrative flow, the book can also be used as a nice intervention. And these opening passages, another term that I like to use for them is gata. And this is a Zen term. And I view these as uh, short pieces that a caregiver could carry in their pocket, if you will, to support them. So it summarizes the main theme of the chapter itself. And then the body of the chapter, as you say, is really the main teaching. And then it felt very important that every chapter have a practice activity. So, as you well know, in our courses, when each course session ends, we offer an invitation to the participants to practice at home on their own. So it was that idea. It was to give people an opportunity to take the particular content of that chapter and then have a way of working with it on their own and to reflect upon the content of the chapter and the approaches included therein. Um, so I wasn't planning to do this, but if I may, I'd like to just share one of these short gathas
Please.
because, yeah, here's one I just opened to, and this is chapter 15. And the title of the chapter is Compassion is Contagious. So that opening passage reads, "This heart of compassion, radiating with infinite potential, one small act of service can change the world." So something as simple as that. And then, the chapter goes on to talk about what you've heard me say before. One of my favorite teachings when it comes to compassion, that when we act from a place of compassion, it not only benefits the person who's receiving that act of compassion, it not only benefits the person who's offering the act of compassion, but when the act of compassion is witnessed, the witness also benefits. It also stimulates reward centers in the brain and makes us feel better about ourselves and the world we live in. So the chapter, goes a little bit deeper into this idea and what that looks like. But that's just a little example of one of those opening passages.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. And even just in that, what you just shared with us in the quote about compassion and one act of service, just thinking about how the opportunity for many caregivers to have their day to day activities, some of which I know can feel like a grind or burdensome, framed as an act of service. That how beautiful to kind of bring that elevation to people's experience.
Yeah,
Mm.
this what you're pointing to, I think, is a big part of the practice, right? Like all of us have experienced the way when we're highly burdened, when we're feeling stressed out, our thinking becomes very narrow, right? And it's hard to really expand our point of view beyond, what is causing us stress. Whether it's the suffering of the person we're caring for, or whether it's something that they've said that has hurt us or made us angry, our thinking, our point of view becomes very narrow. And so, this kind of reframing that you were describing, it opens up our thinking, it expands our point of view to take in more. So, as you say, when caregiving becomes so burdensome, I think it can be really helpful to hear or to remind ourselves that, this is about something bigger than this circumstance, that this act of caring for another is, it's a noble act, it's a beautiful act, it's an act of compassion. And um, not only will this person I'm caring for benefit from it, but ultimately I will as well. It can be a process of growth and transformation, even though often it may not feel that way. It may feel just like a lot of work, and it may feel really exhausting. But yeah, I like the idea of just offering, um, some kind of hope or a pathway to moving through caregiving and coming out the other end, um, as someone who has really grown and learned and benefited from the process itself. And then when we come out the other end, or sometimes in the midst of caregiving, we can offer to others what we've learned through our own challenges and difficulty, or, joys and sense of deep connection.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. So staying with this idea of sort of a journey or a process, and I heard you say that the book, the intention, the hope is that people pick up the book and they read it all the way through, start to finish, in the order in which you carefully arrange the structure and the topics, and that it's also designed people can kind of pick it up and dip in, and there's something in each chapter, each topic, the practices, the reflections. So I'm curious, like, ideally, if you could choose sort of who is this book for? And like a caregiver, where in their caregiving journey would you like to, yeah, get this book into someone's hand and into their heart? Yeah.
Well, this question came up recently, and um, the way I often respond is these teachings that we teach at Zen Caregiving Project, the teachings contained within the book, in many ways, they're kind of an insurance policy. Ideally, we learn these skills before we reach the point of burnout, before we reach the point where our the demands that are placed on us exceed our resources. So ideally, the audience for this book are caregivers, future caregivers for sure, but caregivers who are early in their journey. However, I think the book would be really supportive and useful to someone who's even kind of at the end of their rope, and looking for something that's going to offer them some solace and some tools to begin to strengthen once again their emotional resilience. That some kind of tools that they can use to be able to step back, look at their own experience, and begin to make some what I would describe as micro changes in their daily routines, to build back some of their strength, to perhaps recalibrate their attitude or approach to the work itself. I like the idea of the book as being a possible gift for a caregiver when we don't know how else to support them or help them. I think that would be beautiful if it ends up becoming that. And, you know, this isn't a book about you should be doing this. It's really a book full of ideas and invitations. And, but I would say, gosh, I really have come to believe that in school, we should be talking about caring for a loved one and how to stay healthy and emotionally resilient when delivering care. As you well know, we're seeing more and more young family caregivers. Sometimes they're kids, um, often they're teenagers. There are currently the number is about 65 million caregivers in our country currently, family caregivers. And a number of them are, well, there's quite a wide age range, but, there is this phenomena of the sandwich caregiver, someone who is of an age where they're caring for their young kids, but also caring for aging parents. So I guess the point is, I think the book really is relevant at any stage of caregiving, but I would love to see people who maybe are watching, say, parents age, pick up the book in anticipation of the day when they may be called on to offer care.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm just thinking too of the how common it can be to anticipate becoming a caregiver,
Mm.
one of those 4 types of people that, um, former First Lady Rosalind Carter mentions in the quote I know you use in the book, that we anticipate caregiving sometimes with a lot of dread and fear, and we know that it's burdensome and challenging, and there's reason to, proceed with caution. But just if a young person saw their parent, being a healthy, well-resourced, moment to moment, caring for themselves caregiver to, say, their grandparent, then, the idea of what will it be like when it's my turn to caregive might look and feel really different. Yeah, as young people um, aspired to, yeah, being caregivers for their elders one day. Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
and as you've heard me say before, I take a very broad interpretation of the term caregiver. It's still true that a lot of people who are offering care to family, friends, loved ones don't really see themselves as caregivers. So I think these approaches in the book are relevant and useful, say, even in a partnership where maybe my sweetie has a rough day at work and she comes home and she's just needing something from me. I think the approaches that are presented in the book can be really supportive even in that scenario. Or, I ran out to the grocery store a little bit earlier today, and the clerk who was checking me out seemed like he was having a rough day. How can I show up for this person? I don't even know this person's name, but in that moment, how can I show up for this encounter in a way where he feels, if not directly supported, at least really met and witnessed in whatever he's experiencing. So, anyways, it kind of caregiving runs the spectrum, right? And I would also say, in answer to your question, I think the book is also relevant for clinical caregivers, direct care workers, that really important part of our healthcare system. Typically, the lowest paid caregiver. And I think for paid caregivers as well as family caregivers, these are approaches that can be used, whether we're in the home setting or in a more typical healthcare setting.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Hmm. Um, I wanted to ask you a little bit or hear you um, talk a little bit about this idea or concept of trust. It comes up a lot in the book as I read it. Um, so I'm just thinking of trust in process, trust in one's own intention and goodness, trust when there's doubt or fear or discomfort. Um, yeah, I'd just love to hear you say a little bit about your relationship with trust in your own practice, your own
Mm.
experience as a caregiver, in your experience as a teacher of our courses to caregivers and how it's included in the book.
Yeah, this question surprises me in a really wonderful way. So I'm really happy that you honed in on this important concept and word, trust. I am someone who in my life has dealt with so much doubt, self doubt about myself and my abilities, but also doubt about the safety of the world around me. And so I feel like trust is the antidote to doubt. And so where this really comes up, I share stories in the book. There are a lot of stories throughout the book. My wife kept whispering in my ear, "You need more stories, you need more stories." And it was like, good advice. And yeah, so I
We're all
share.
grateful to her for encouraging you to share more stories.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tell her. Um, I share my experience of showing up and supporting a woman who lives with a particular type of chronic long-term illness. And when I'm with her, it's not uncommon for her to share stories about her childhood, which was quite rough and difficult, traumatic. And in those moments, I notice my mind very naturally going to a place of wanting to console her, to comfort her, to alleviate her pain, to fix her situation. And at this point, I've been working with these practices for so long, it's easy for me to notice this mindset, catch myself, and then come back to a place of reminding myself, I don't need to fix this. I don't need to change the situation. I need to trust that my presence and my listening ear and my open heart, if I can keep it open, is enough. And that's exactly what's needed in this situation. She's not asking me to take that pain away. She's not asking me to fix her situation. I think what is most supportive in that kind of situation is just my presence. And this is hard for a lot of people. What I've come to believe in witnessing both people who are dealing with long term chronic and terminal illness, but also people who are caregivers, and in my own experience of offering care, what people most crave is a sense of deep human connection. And whatever we can do to deepen or enhance that sense of connection, I think is just the ultimate gift that we can give someone who's dealing with illness. So trusting that that's enough, trusting that we're enough. I discuss this a little bit in the section on loss and nearing end of life. Sometimes we feel like we're not enough. I need to call in the experts now. And sure, you want to have really talented nurses and doctors and sometimes social workers at the ready. But I want caregivers to know that they can trust their own presence as being enough. That old quote that you know so well, in the beginner's mind, possibilities are endless. In the expert's mind, possibilities are limited. So trusting that there's something really supportive and showing up exactly as you are, nothing extra, nothing missing, and this will be enough. So both of us have spent many years deepening and cultivating this practice of mindfulness. And, in my life, I've dedicated myself to this Zen path of spiritual practice. And I think in the beginning stages of taking on any practice, whether it's just simply trying to cultivate and deepen mindful awareness or dedicating oneself to a particular approach, does require trust. Um, when you look at the science, we begin to understand that when we practice mindfulness and notice when the mind gets distracted, when we notice when we've been swept away by distracting thoughts, and then we make a choice to come back to present moment awareness. In that process, we're actually, you know, changing and growing changing the neural pathways and growing new neural pathways in the brain. And as we practice, we reach a point where we realize, oh, I'm really responding differently to this kind of situation, whether it be a situation of overwhelm or, a situation that we've never experienced before. We realize, oh, I am actually approaching this differently now. Like, I can be here, I can show up for this, I can breathe, I can be here. I don't need to be so quick to run away from it or, you know, um, explain it away or pretend it's not happening or be reactive. So that I think requires a certain trust as well, to trust in the practices and see if you notice something different in the way you respond. So trust, as you say, does play a big part in the book, as it does in whenever we take on something new in our life.
Yeah. Mm, profound. Thank you. Yeah. Mm. Um, Something else I'm curious about. I know now that the book is out here in the world to share with everyone. It's been a while since you wrote it, and maybe even since you completed it. And um, I've heard other writers kind of say, "Well, that was what I thought when I wrote about X, but now, I kind of see it a little bit differently." So, I'm just wondering, is there anything from where you sit now that isn't in the book that you would, like to include, or anything more that you want us to know about your experience of caregiving? Yeah.
Well, it is an interesting thing. This is the first book I've written and published, and one's relationship to the book itself does change over time. So the book, I submitted the manuscript probably about a year ago, and it's gone through some editing since, for sure. And I feel such a sense of gratitude to these people who are such experts in the English language. And I am grateful for their support in refining the book itself. So it's an interesting process to go back and read it. And there's a particular kind of wonder that I've experienced around, oh, okay, I guess, I did that. But also, I realize I'm no longer that person who wrote that book. So um, I share a lot about my own personal experience in the book, and that can feel like a real edge. But in my practice and in the process of writing the book, it's been a further loosening of my attachment to some fixed sense of who I am in the world. So that's been an interesting process. Are there things that are not included in the book? Absolutely. And I imagine there will continue to be things that I'm asked about or that I read in the book, and I will feel like, I could have explained it a little more clearly. But um, yeah, I haven't been asked this question before, so that's really all that's coming up for me in the moment. Um, and even you, as my colleague in the work, you may actually have some ideas on what could have been or perhaps should have been included in the book. But as I often say, it cannot all be said. So I wanted the book to, and I think I've succeeded. I wanted the book to be short enough so it wouldn't be intimidating to anyone. And I think it's written at a level that's going to be accessible to any caregiver of any kind of from any kind of background. So I hope I've succeeded in that. And yeah, now it's out there in the world. So we'll see. I mean, ultimately, the intention was to serve in a different kind of way, to offer something that could alleviate suffering and offer some benefit out there in the world. And it remains to be seen if I succeed in that, but I certainly hope so. At this point, it's not really up to me. It's up to the universe as to what the book does and who it finds its way to.
There's that trust again, an act of trust. I
Yeah.
trust. I trust that all of that is true. I certainly feel it reading the book and knowing you. And yeah, we can trust that the universe will see to it. Yeah. All right. So this beautiful book exists. It's out there in the world. We're trusting that it's going to get into the hands of many, many, many folks, but we want to support that in happening. So, Roy, let us know how people can get the book for themselves, for others, and how they can find out more about you and the work of Zen Caregiving Project and the courses that we teach.
Thank you, Mary. Well, the book is out there, so you can check your local bookstore. It's available from online retailers. The book is available both in its print version, but also in an audio version as well. And to learn more about myself or our activities at Zen Caregiving Project, you can find more information at zencaregiving.org. And on our website, we, of course, have information on classes that are coming up. So we offer classes to anyone who's interested on a monthly basis. So please visit us. There's also resource page at the end of the book, and we have resources on our website as well. So, Mary, I'm really grateful for your attention to the book itself and for taking time to ask me questions about the book. And I just wish all those who are seeing this comfort and ease in their lives. And if you're in the role of caregiver, I thank you for the service you're offering others. So thank you very much.
Thank you.